It's not the winning, but the taking part that counts. It's an incredibly naff phrase, but you know what? It is true. Whenever we tell tales of past board games we played, we're very slow to recount who actually managed to win them. But we all want to tell the tale of the journey we took from beginning to end throughout. It's a fascinating thing to do. However, for the competitive friends in your group, that spiel just does not work. They're in it to win it. And it can be a bit awkward when you invite two of them along for a games night and they're sitting in the corner chalking up victories to every game they've had. And it can be doubly awkward if they meet loggerheads right at the end with the same amount of victories and one more game can claim the night for them, but everyone else just kind of wants to go home. And what do you do in that situation? Well, hopefully you have one of these three games on hand. In this video, I'll be looking at tiebreaker games, games that two people can duel out over, are relatively quick to play, can round off an evening quite nicely, but most importantly, are incredibly fun to play, but also really fun to simply watch. Pucket is not only potentially rude rhyme, but an elasticated table dexterity game, which doesn't look great from the sound, actually. There we go, that's a bit better. So, Pucket gives you an elastic band, your own pot of land, and 8 little pucks dotted around it. Problem is, you don't want the pucks. You want the pucks over in the opposing player's plot of land. The only way to get them through is through this tiny little gate here, and you know what? It's actually not that bad a prospect when you slowly think about it, and you give them the time to just fire them straight through. No, that's actually a pretty easy game. Get another player involved though. Now, if Pucket seems familiar to you, it might be because it's actually a new version of a game called Tablet Elastique, which French artisans would make from wood and use catgut for the elastic, which had to be kept moisture in gameplay to stop it turning limp. So whilst it may not be 100% authentic, Pucket is at least a lot less disgusting in that regard. You've got this nice high quality elastic to ping your pucks about with, and that's actually kind of unfair because the entire board is of consistently high quality. It's absolutely fabulous in its simplicity. Also quite a fun game as well, which kind of helps, but you don't realise how fun it is until after you've played it, because this is a particularly stressful game. You see, having good accuracy is one thing, but really this is a game of keeping your cool. It's like a ye olde puzzle fighter. It's very hard to focus on your one puck, trying to get it through this tiny gate here, when you've got a series of pucks coming from the other side, occasionally quite rapidly, occasionally butting heads in the middle and just having them meet there. And this ever-growing army on your own side of not only pucks to deal back, but obstacles that you can just shuffle out of the way in order for a clear shot on your own goal. When put under pressure, this is an incredibly hard game to play. However, it is an absolutely hilarious game to watch. I could talk about how frantic games of Pucket are all day, but really it's quite a simple game, and that's part of its charm. If, however, I haven't sold you on the experience and you're trying to find more reasons to chuck money at it, the only thing I've got left to say is the quality of components are absolutely outstanding. ET Games have really made a name for themselves when it comes to constructing these handmade wooden titles. And you can tell they do it with charm by simply reading the manual, and even the box, it's filled to the brim with their dry humour. So, if you haven't seen the look of fear in your friend's eyes, or you're looking for a nice centrepiece that doubles as quite an awesome game, I definitely recommend Pucket. If, however, you are looking for a dexterity title that focuses purely on skill and gains its tension from a slow, steady build-up, then I definitely recommend our next game, Elk Fest. And not because it's got 2 moose in it, which are quite cute. This is a moose called Ollie. This is a moose called Jules. This table is an icy river, and these stones are the only safe way to get across it. And when you throw all those things together, you get Mass Flickathon Elk Fest, a bloody brilliant game about terribly misjudged distances and close quarters awkwardness. At the start of the game of Elk Fest, players will start with 3 stepping stones, so the starting player would flick 1 to ensure they wouldn't get an unfair advantage. And now the second player will flick 2 stones, albeit poorly. And then from this point on, everyone flicks 2, so 1, 2. And then it's back to me again with another 2 flicker, but wait a minute, I'm out of stones. From this point on, it's moves as every player can use any stepping stone they like, with Ollie attempting to get to Jules' side and Jules attempting to get to Ollie's side. So as Ollie has one more flick, we can go there. And then during or after a turn, a player can choose to move their move. So in this case, as it's close enough, I would imagine, yeah, Ollie can move onto there. So it looks pretty simple because it is pretty simple, but you'd be surprised how bad you can be at this game when put under pressure. That shot I just did took about 5 takes, and this is a complete fabrication. But realistically, you're going to find yourself in this scenario when you're trying to get to the other player's platform and they're trying to get to yours. This awkward kind of nuzzling session. But throughout, you have this constant dilemma. You see, there's only ever 2 free stepping stones to take. So if, say, on your opponent's turn they try to flick it towards them with no avail, even though I just did it terribly, I'll just move it like that. Usually the stones will lie behind enemy lines, so it takes some real genuine skill in order to try and flick them in your general direction. Of course, if you fail, then you've created an issue for them. So there's this weird fine balance where you're always going to be put in danger, but even if you fail, you're then just basically mimicking the danger for the other player. It's genuinely quite fascinating for a game with Eskimo kisses with moose. One thing I really love about Elk Fest though is the fact that it doesn't encourage aggression. If you're the one that falls into the icy water, that's it. You lose your turn, opponent gets 3 actions. But if you find a way of tipping them into the icy water, then you lose your turn and they get 3 actions. You're the one that's penalised for your aggressive behaviour, which means you really have to engage your skill loads in moving these stepping stones around the ever-moving obstacle that is your opponent. It's quite fascinating that a game of, well, 6 small cylinders, 2 moo shapes and 2 wavy islands can actually have a strong amount of strategic depth to it. Every time we bring it out in drafts, it never fails to get an audience of oohs and ahs, and people just enraptured in this game. In fact, don't play it in your living room. Go down to the pub if you can and play it there. I guarantee they'd be just as fascinated, and by the end of the week, all pool tables would have been replaced with Elk Fest. For goodness sake. Okay, so we've had Pucket, which is an incredibly rapid dexterity game, and we've had Elk Fest, which slowly builds the tension until it's quite frankly unbearable. But our final game doesn't really care much for pacing. It just goes, screw it, let's just do a game with monkeys and rubber coconuts in it. Come on. Coconut Duo is a game of basketball gone horribly, horribly right, where players have to flick rubber coconuts into coloured cups using their monkey assistants that sit directly in front of them. It is arguably the most fun 5 to 500 minutes 2 people can have together, as long as they can get used to the psychotic smiles on their monkeys' faces. You're right, mate. Despite its somewhat garish outset, Coconut Duo is pretty much as simple as Pucket or Elk Fest. On their turn, players will take a coconut, they will chuck it into a cup. If they do so, they add to their stack and try and create a pyramid of 6 cups in order to win the game. Can't do that by their own hand though, have to do it by the hands of this little fella here, and I must say, he's clearly got quite a throw on him. In fact, if you were to give him anything, you'd probably check it halfway across the room, be it coconuts, money, whatever integrity you have left after somebody discovered that you were playing Coconut Duo. If you were to look up chuckability in the dictionary, you'd see this massive grinning face staring into your soul. Problem is, his talents aren't always that helpful with the game you're actually trying to play. Where's that gone? Now, the more eagle-eyed of you would have realised that there are only 9 cups in the centre of the table, which would mean that in a really close battle it will be impossible for any player to get the 6-cup pyramid they need. However, at any point in the game, due to luck, which is likely, general skill, which is very unlikely, or spite if they're a jerk, your opponent gets a coconut in one of your cups, they take that cup and add it to their own pyramid. And oh my goodness, no matter how big the score gap is, this always makes for the most intense end game. It's pretty clear to see there's a lot to love about Coconut Duo right from the off, but the thing I love about it the most is the fact that it completely demolishes any competitive spirit in you as soon as you walk in and see just how ridiculous it is. And this extends when you start learning about more of the complexities of the rules. These red cups here, if you manage to get a coconut in those, you get an extra shot, and that's all fair. But then there's these cards, which you get dealt 2 of at the beginning of each game. And some of these are just borderline horrible. There's stuff like this where basically the referee was asleep, so you can play that on an opponent once they've taken a shot and go, nah, sorry, no one saw that, you had to take that shot again. Or this one, which forces your opponent to play a shot blind, which isn't actually all that bad, because if they manage to get it in a cup, which is actually entirely possible, then that's a pretty remarkable feat, which you have to applaud. Now, there's horrible things like this, where your thumb is apparently hurt and you have to take a shot using your elbow, which, I mean, it's possible, but I've never encountered a moment where your elbow doesn't just block the coconut from leaving. We're also talking about general kind of unfairness. We need to talk about these coconuts, so I don't believe you understand the gravity of the situation when I say these are made out of rubber, because thanks to their horribly rounded edges, they just kind of bounce high and bounce anywhere into a cup, it would imagine. And it just creates these horrible fluky scenarios that you're placed in, where your opponent will fire a coconut and it'll just bounce a couple of times around the table and then magically into your cup and they'll steal it and, oh, hey, that's the game. Or that horrible situation where you fire one into a cup and it just fires out and, sorry, that's coconut stew, you don't get it. It's so unbelievably ridiculous that even if you're on the negative end of it, you cannot help but laugh. And it leads these magically fluky tournaments which end up with shots as ridiculous as this one.
Problem is, his talents aren't always helpful when it comes to the game you're actually trying to play. That went in!
So yes, of course, I recommend Coconut Stew. Although, actually, I recommend visiting the parallel dimension where Coconut Stew is as big as football. Because that's just a wonderful place.
I don't think I've been entirely fair with this collection of reviews, because it's pretty clear that I have a favourite, but the fact remains that all three of these games are terrifically fun duels for two players and are just as enjoyable to watch as they are to play. So my recommendation is buy all three, or buy 3 copies of Coconut Duo. And I'm not joking in that instance. The instruction manual actually suggests that you could buy 2 additional copies to play 6-player Coconut Duo. So yeah, go nuts. Just don't enter a tiebreaker in these games. I advise you play in case of a tiebreaker, because then you'll probably enter some sort of weird paradox where you'll have to play Pucket, Elk Fest or Coconut Duo until the end of time, which actually doesn't sound like that bad a thing now that I've said it out loud.